Some books change the way we think about success by offering a new method. Others change the conversation by naming something we have felt all along but never fully understood. Grit by Angela Duckworth does a bit of both. It introduces a word that feels simple, almost plain, and turns it into a powerful lens for understanding achievement. The central question of the book is one that matters to nearly everyone. Why do some people keep going while others stop? Why do certain individuals stay committed to a difficult path for years, even when progress is slow, rewards are delayed, and failure is common? Why do some people outgrow the predictions made about their natural ability, while others with obvious gifts never fully deliver on their early promise? Duckworth's answer is that talent, though real, is not the whole story. In many cases, the stronger predictor of long-term accomplishment is a particular combination of sustained passion and enduring perseverance. She calls this grit. What makes this idea compelling is that it speaks to a deep tension in modern life. We admire talent. We notice brilliance quickly. We are impressed by early success, natural ease, and visible gifts. But most meaningful achievements do not happen quickly. They require long stretches of effort in private, repetition without applause, failure without collapse, and commitment without immediate payoff. Grit names the quality that helps a person stay in that process. This is why the book has appealed to such a wide audience. Students, parents, teachers, athletes, artists, leaders, and professionals all recognize the gap between potential and actual achievement. Grit tries to explain part of that gap. It suggests that success is not only about how much ability you start with. It is also about whether you can sustain effort over time in the direction of something that genuinely matters to you. In this summary, we will explore the architecture of Duckworth's argument. We will look at what grit is, why she believes it matters, how it differs from talent, how passion and perseverance interact, how practice deepens skill, how purpose stabilizes effort, and how hope helps people continue when progress becomes difficult. Along the way, we will also consider why this book remains influential and what its lessons can mean in ordinary life. At the center of Grit is a challenge to one of the most persistent cultural myths, the myth that exceptional achievement is mostly the result of natural talent. Duckworth does not claim talent is meaningless. She does not argue that effort can erase every difference in starting point. What she does argue is that talent is often overrated, especially when people try to explain why some individuals follow through on their abilities while others do not. Many people begin with promise. Fewer people remain devoted long enough to convert promise into excellence. This is where grit enters the picture. Duckworth defines grit as a blend of passion and perseverance for long-term goals. That phrase matters. Not simply perseverance. Not simply enthusiasm. The combination is essential. Passion gives direction. Perseverance gives staying power. Without passion, effort becomes scattered. Without perseverance, interest fades before mastery has time to develop. Together, they create a kind of focused endurance. One of the strengths of this idea is that it changes how we interpret high achievement. Instead of imagining that top performers are always those for whom success feels easiest, Duckworth asks us to notice how often excellence is built by those who can tolerate repetition, remain committed across long timelines, and recover from frustration without abandoning the goal. This shifts the conversation from giftedness to endurance. And that shift is quietly radical. It means the drama of talent may capture attention early, but the steadiness of effort often determines what becomes real in the end. The thesis also has an emotional effect on the reader. It is demanding because it removes some excuses. You cannot simply say, "I do not have enough talent," and end the conversation there. But it is also hopeful. If effort truly counts in profound ways, then achievement is more open than many people assume. It is not reserved exclusively for prodigies. It belongs, at least in part, to those who are willing to keep going with discipline and direction over long stretches of time. This is why the book feels both scientific and moral. It does not merely describe a psychological trait. It praises a way of living. It honors sustained devotion over flash, consistency over novelty, and long obedience over dramatic beginnings. It is easy to misunderstand grit if we hear the word too casually. We might assume it means toughness, stubbornness, resilience, or a willingness to work hard. Duckworth includes aspects of all of these, but her concept is more specific. Grit is not just the ability to endure hardship in general. It is the ability to endure hardship in sustained service of a meaningful long-term aim. That is why the passion component matters so much. A person can be hardworking without being gritty if their efforts are scattered in too many directions. They can be stubborn without being gritty if they persist in something shallow or disconnected from genuine commitment. For Duckworth, grit means a kind of organized persistence. It means staying loyal to a larger goal over time, even while the daily tasks required to pursue that goal may be repetitive, frustrating, or mundane. This is one of the most useful clarifications in the book because many people think lack of progress means lack of ability, when often it simply reflects lack of long-term steadiness. The gritty person is not constantly reinventing themselves. They are not perpetually abandoning one aspiration for another at the first sign of boredom. They remain engaged long enough for depth to form. This means grit is closely tied to identity. What do you care about enough to keep returning to it? What matters enough that you can continue investing in it without constant novelty or instant reward? These questions give the concept psychological depth. Grit is not merely external performance. It is a relationship between the self and a chosen direction. That is why it can apply in many fields. A musician, teacher, entrepreneur, writer, student, parent, researcher, athlete, or community leader can all show grit if they continue moving faithfully toward work that matters deeply over time. In that sense, grit is less about drama and more about durability. One of the most memorable frameworks in the book is Duckworth's distinction between talent and effort. She explains that talent influences how quickly skill can develop, but effort is what turns talent into skill, and then turns skill into achievement. This is sometimes summarized in the idea that effort counts twice. First, effort builds skill. Second, effort makes that skill productive in the world. This matters because it reveals how misleading first impressions can be. Someone may seem naturally capable, but if they do not sustain disciplined effort, their talent remains underdeveloped or inconsistently expressed. Meanwhile, someone with more modest natural advantages may keep improving through persistent practice, eventually overtaking people who once appeared far more gifted. This idea is valuable because it restores dignity to disciplined labor. It tells us that effort is not a consolation prize for those who lack talent. It is one of the central engines of real accomplishment. It also explains why early signs of brilliance are not enough. A person can look impressive at the beginning and still fail to build anything lasting. Another person can seem ordinary at first and grow into excellence through consistency. In everyday life, this is incredibly relevant. Many people have internalized a quiet defeatism about their abilities. They believe that if something does not come naturally, they probably are not meant for it. Duckworth's framework pushes against that assumption. It reminds us that progress is often nonlinear and that repeated effort changes what becomes possible. Not everything becomes easy, but more becomes developable than we usually imagine. Duckworth's use of the word passion is one of the most easily misunderstood parts of the book. In everyday speech, passion often means intense feeling, excitement, or immediate emotional energy. But that is not quite what she means. In Grit, passion is less about emotional intensity and more about enduring direction. It is a stable loyalty to a long-term interest. It is the capacity to remain attached to something over years rather than weeks. This is an important distinction because modern culture often treats passion as fireworks. If the feeling is not intense, people think they have chosen the wrong path. Duckworth argues for something steadier. Real passion often deepens slowly. It grows through exploration, investment, challenge, and meaning. It is less like a lightning strike and more like a root system. This matters because grit depends on continuity. If your interests constantly change, your efforts will always reset before they can compound. But if your interests mature and consolidate, effort begins to gather force. You stay with the craft. You stay with the mission. You stay with the question. And that long staying makes mastery possible. Duckworth's insight here is subtle and powerful. She gives people permission to stop chasing endless novelty and instead ask a more serious question. What am I willing to care about long enough to become excellent at it? That is a question not only about career or achievement, but about identity. It invites commitment. It asks for depth over stimulation. And in a distracted world, that is already a significant challenge. If passion provides direction, perseverance provides endurance. This is where grit becomes especially demanding. Perseverance is not simply working hard when the work feels fresh. It is the ability to continue when progress is slow, when feedback is discouraging, when recognition is absent, and when the task has become repetitive. Much of human effort fails not at the beginning, but in the middle. The beginning often contains energy, hope, and visible movement. The middle is different. The middle is where boredom appears. The middle is where people compare themselves to others and start doubting their path. The middle is where setbacks accumulate. The middle is where effort becomes ordinary and results remain uncertain. Duckworth is deeply interested in who can survive this phase. Her answer is that perseverance is not a glamorous trait. It is quiet. It often looks like returning to the task without drama. It looks like repetition, discipline, and the refusal to let temporary frustration redefine long-term commitment. This is one reason the book lands so strongly with readers. It validates the emotional reality of hard pursuits. It acknowledges that worthwhile work often becomes tedious. Improvement is rarely constant. Motivation fades. Yet the gritty person continues. Not because they enjoy every moment, but because they are anchored to something larger than the discomfort of the present mood. This makes perseverance a form of maturity. It means your behavior is no longer governed entirely by feeling. You can continue through uneven periods without assuming something has gone wrong. In practical terms, this can transform the way we approach almost anything: exercise, study, skill development, parenting, healing, writing, leadership, spiritual growth, or long-term projects. The question becomes less, do I feel inspired today, and more, am I willing to remain faithful to what I have chosen even when the emotional rewards are delayed? A major strength of grit is that it links perseverance to practice rather than to vague effort alone. Duckworth emphasizes that progress is not produced by simply doing something over and over without reflection. Improvement comes through deliberate practice. That means working on specific weaknesses, pushing just beyond your current comfort zone, seeking correction, and repeating the process consistently. This is where grit becomes sharply practical. A gritty person does not only endure. They endure in a way that keeps refining ability. They are willing to stay in contact with difficulty because difficulty is often where learning lives. This is important because many people love the identity of being committed more than the reality of being corrected. But deliberate practice is corrective by nature. It reveals flaws. It forces humility. It asks for concentration. It can feel less rewarding in the short term than simply performing what you already do well. Yet Duckworth suggests that this kind of disciplined discomfort is one of the key engines of mastery. Grit, then, is not blind stubbornness. It is the willingness to stay in the demanding zone where actual growth occurs. This has implications far beyond elite performance. In ordinary life, deliberate practice can mean revising work carefully instead of rushing it. It can mean studying weak areas instead of reviewing only what feels easy. It can mean learning to receive feedback without collapse. It can mean giving sustained attention to what still needs development. In all these cases, Grit is the trait that keeps a person in contact with the work long enough for skill to deepen. One of the reasons Grit feels more humane than a simple book about toughness is that Duckworth gives serious attention to meaning. She does not present perseverance as brute force disconnected from care. She suggests that long-term commitment grows more naturally when the work is connected to interest and purpose. Interest helps begin a path. It gives energy and curiosity. But purpose deepens that path. Purpose connects personal effort to something larger than private ambition. It allows a person to see their work as useful, significant, or in service to others. This matters because hardship is easier to bear when it is attached to meaning. A task that feels pointless becomes exhausting quickly. A task that feels connected to a larger aim becomes easier to continue through difficulty. Duckworth's emphasis on purpose therefore broadens the idea of success. Achievement is not only about getting ahead. It can also be about contributing, building, teaching, serving, and improving the lives of others. This is one reason her account of grit has such staying power. It does not reduce people to machines of effort. It recognizes that human beings need reasons to continue. And the strongest reasons are often rooted in care, contribution, and identity. In practical terms, this means that anyone trying to build more grit should ask not only, how do I work harder, but also, why does this matter deeply enough to deserve my staying power? Without that question, perseverance can become dry. With it, perseverance becomes more durable. Another crucial ingredient in Duckworth's framework is hope. Not optimism in a vague or sentimental sense, but a practical belief that effort can still matter. This kind of hope protects a person from interpreting setbacks as permanent verdicts. It allows failure to be seen as temporary, specific, and workable rather than global and final. This is vital because even strong people stop trying when they come to believe that trying changes nothing. Hope keeps effort alive by preserving the sense that action still has meaning. Duckworth's use of hope also helps explain why two people can face similar obstacles and respond very differently. One treats the setback as a signal to withdraw. The other treats it as part of the process and continues. The difference is often not emotion alone, but interpretation. Does this difficulty mean I am done, or does it mean I need to adjust and persist? This kind of hope is deeply practical in learning, career development, relationships, health, and recovery. It helps people resist the temptation to turn one hard season into a total identity. If grit keeps a person moving through long challenges, hope helps keep the inner world from collapsing under those challenges. It says the future is still open to effort. That message is not naive. It is necessary. Grit is not only a book about individual success. It also has implications for the way families, schools, and organizations think about development. If Duckworth is right, then one of the most important things adults can do is help young people build commitment, disciplined effort, and recovery from failure. This means praising process more wisely, creating environments where challenge is not treated as a sign of deficiency, and teaching that progress often requires sustained attention over time. It also means reconsidering how quickly people are labeled. When a child is called naturally smart, they may become more afraid of difficulty because difficulty threatens that identity. But when a child learns that effort, strategy, and persistence are normal parts of growth, challenge becomes less threatening. The same principle applies to adult environments. Workplaces, teams, and institutions that value only quick wins or visible brilliance may accidentally undermine the slower traits that create lasting excellence. By contrast, cultures that respect consistency, resilience, and meaningful practice may produce stronger long-term performance. One of the book's broader achievements is that it turns grit into a cultural conversation, not merely a private virtue. It asks what kinds of communities help people stay the course, and what kinds of messages either strengthen or weaken disciplined perseverance. Part of reading grit well is understanding both its power and its limits. Duckworth gives the reader a compelling framework for one important ingredient of success, but grit is not the only ingredient. Opportunity matters. Support matters. Health matters. Environment matters. Timing matters. Resources matter. Social and economic realities matter. A responsible reading of the book does not deny these things. Instead, it sees Duckworth's argument as a corrective to a different distortion, the tendency to overcredit talent and undercredit sustained effort. This nuance is useful because it keeps the book from becoming a moral oversimplification. Not every failure is caused by lack of grit. Not every success can be explained by it. But the concept still matters because it highlights a powerful and cultivable quality. It reminds people that persistence, when joined to meaningful direction, can alter life trajectories in significant ways. This balance makes the book stronger, not weaker. It allows the reader to take its lessons seriously without turning them into a total theory of human worth. The lasting appeal of grit comes from the dignity it gives to sustained effort. It tells a story about achievement that is less glamorous than the mythology of genius, but in many ways more truthful and more useful. It says that excellence is often built in quiet ways, through repetition, recommitment, disciplined practice, meaningful direction, and the refusal to let discouragement have the final word. It reminds us that greatness is not always a matter of shining early. Sometimes it is a matter of staying longer. Staying with the craft. Staying with the question. Staying with the mission. Staying with the work after the easy rewards disappear. This is why the book speaks to so many different kinds of people. Almost everyone knows what it feels like to begin. Fewer know how to continue well. Duckworth gives language to that challenge. She suggests that one of the most important differences between unrealized potential and realized accomplishment is the capacity to remain devoted over time. That is a sober message because it means there are no shortcuts around commitment. But it is also an encouraging message because commitment is something that can be built. The final gift of the book is this. It teaches us to respect the slow compounding power of effort. Not frantic effort. Not scattered effort. Not temporary effort. Steady effort attached to something that matters. In a culture easily distracted by speed, novelty, and visible talent, that reminder feels both countercultural and deeply wise. Grit asks us to look again at the long road and understand that the people who travel far are often not the ones who seemed most extraordinary at the start. They are the ones who kept going.